Cool. All right, so hello everyone. Yeah, I'm just gonna intro again. So just thank you for coming, for joining this informal chat today from Canberra Blockchain Center, and we're just gonna run a Q&A session with Bruno here. And I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. Yeah, it's our usual meetup is every second Tuesday, so we'll look forward to this kind of great chat after Cardano Summit, which if anyone went to, probably still a bit knackered because overnight stays, it was pretty hard. But right, should Bruno maybe just a few words of who you are, how you got there, and what you're doing with Djed.
Okay, yeah, hi everyone. So I'm IOHK's technical director for stablecoins and CBDCs. And we have been working on Djed, which is a stablecoin. And we released a few things related to Djed in the summit. And I would like to have a conversation with you. So I already shared many resources for you to read before this conversation, right? So I want this conversation to be as informal as possible and to give you as much opportunity as you would like to ask questions, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have about Djed. This is a meetup of the Canberra Blockchain Center, right? And as I mentioned before the recording started, I spent 5 years living in Canberra. I really like Canberra. I was working at the Australian National University before I joined IOHK. That's it. So I assume that some of you may have already read about Djed, but maybe for those who haven't read or seen anything yet, maybe I could give a brief overview and then we go straight into questions. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, so let me see how I can share my screen here. Just a moment. Okay. So you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the goals that we had with Djed was to make it very simple. So we had analyzed many stablecoins that existed before we started working on Djed, right? And we noticed that often there were claims that they were stable, but there was no thorough mathematical analysis about this stability. As some of you may know, I have a background in formal methods, in automated reasoning, logic, so I like to prove things very formally. So and I wanted to create a stablecoin protocol where we could actually prove the stability claims. So it's not easy to apply formal methods, especially if what you're trying to analyze with formal methods is too complex. So one of the requirements that we had was to have a protocol that was very simple. And I think we succeeded in this because our protocol can be summarized in a single slide like this.
That's lovely.
So basically it's an algorithmic stablecoin, right? So it follows an algorithm. And this algorithm can be implemented as a smart contract. So we have here, for example, a smart contract that acts like a bank, and this bank will keep a reserve of base coins. For example, in the case of Cardano, it would be ADA, but we have also deployed this stablecoin in other blockchains like Ergo, where the base coin is ERG. And yeah, as a user, you can buy stable coins from the contract. So you deposit, for example, ADA in the contract. You deposit an amount of ADA that is equal to $1 at the moment when you're doing the deposit, right? Based on the value provided by an oracle. And then the contract will create one stable coin and send this stable coin to you. And then later, at any moment, you can sell back your stable coin, and provided that there are sufficient reserves here, the bank will give back an amount of ADA equivalent to $1. Now, if we had only this part here of the picture, then, for example, if the price of ADA fell too much, then suddenly there wouldn't be enough ADA to pay back when users sell stable coins back to the contract, right? So to kind of fix the situation, we have this other side of the picture here, where users can also buy reserve coins. And so with these reserve coins, basically you're providing additional reserves to the contract. And the price of the reserve coin is basically the equity divided by the number of reserve coins in circulation. Right? The equity is the part of the reserve. So if you take the reserve and you subtract everything that you owe to the stable coin holders, what remains is the equity, right? So the reserve coin is a bit like owning a share in a company.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's the incentive for people to buy these reserve coins, right, and provide additional reserves? The incentive is that as people perform these 4 operations, they pay fees. And these fees, they are accumulated in the reserve. And this is a revenue stream for the reserve coin holders, right? So let's suppose that you bought your reserve coin for 10 ADA, and then people are doing lots of operations, and now the equity increased, and now the equity per reserve coin is 11 ADA. So when you sell back your reserve coin, you get 11 ADA back. So yeah, indirectly, you end up benefiting from these fees that are paid to the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think in a nutshell, that's how it works. So yeah. I guess we could go into questions. Yeah.
Cool. Well, while you on this slide, maybe I'll ask, like, how the reserve coin price is determined?
Yeah, so the reserve coin price is determined by this equation here. So you take the equity of the contract.
Sorry. Yeah, you just said that.
By the number of reserve coins in circulation. But yeah, due to some technical issues, when the price of reserve coin is too low, the price is, so there's a minimum price for the reserve coin, which is fixed at the moment of deployment of the contract. Yeah.
And it can't drop below, I guess.
So the price will be the maximum of this and this when you're buying stable coins. And when you're selling stable coins, the price will be this one.
Yeah, so once, if the liabilities drop to kind of a very low amount, your reserve coin would have a higher value in that scenario. So to give you incentive to sell into and increase the bucket of equity. Oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely understood the question, but yeah, like if the liabilities go down,
yeah,
then the equity will go up.
Yeah.
And then the price of reserve coins will go up.
Yeah, so it's an
This
incentive.
may happen, for example, if the price of ADA goes up. If the price of ADA goes up, then something like this would happen. So yeah, you can see the reserve coins as a kind of leveraged long position on ADA, on the base coin, right?
Yeah.
So when the price of ADA goes up, the price of reserve coins goes even more up. But the converse is also true. If the price of ADA goes down, then the price of reserve coins go even more down. So yeah, there are actually these two incentives for people to buy reserve coins, right? One is the revenue from fees, and the other one is the leverage.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm just looking at some. I think you just replied, answered the questions in the comments. What happens when ADA changes in value, and what happens if there are large movements in the value of ADA. So we kind of, I think you just gone through that. Let's go to, all right. So maybe what is a, so it's back to ADA or to the reserve, but you mentioned that it's backed by a bucket of different coins as well. Is that the case or will it be just ADA?
It's just one base coin.
One base coin, yeah.
We thought about allowing the reserve to have a basket of currencies, but there are some technical issues with that. So for now, it's just one base coin. So in the case of Cardano, it will be ADA. In the case of Ergo, it's ERG. But also, it doesn't have to be the primary currency of the blockchain. For example, we do have a deployment on Binance Smart Chain, where the base coin is wrapped ADA instead of being BNB.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right.
And there's also something that we plan to do as well. So maybe you have seen in the summit that there are plans to have EVM side chains of Cardano.
Yeah.
So we do have plans to have an implementation in Bluetooth, right, on the mainnet of Cardano. And not only plans, we are actually actively working on that, and there's ongoing implementation happening there. But we also have this implementation in Solidity that we have already deployed to some testnets. And one reason why we are working on a Solidity implementation is because we expect that there will be EVM side chains of Cardano. For example, GC Spark is working on a side chain that they're calling Mulcomeda. And yeah, we expect that once we have these EVM side chains, we would be able to have Djed deployed to the side chains using wrapped ADA.
Cool. But the system will be as a single system, and will you have to will it be blockchain specific or will it be agnostic? So like you can just go to Djed and then swap your ETH on Avalanche and Polygon and BSC what you have a testnets there, and then swap it automatically, or will it be separate for every chain? So like would you have to have a different different wallets for different kind of different coins?
Yeah, I think I understood the question. So we are not working on any bridge between the different deployments of Djed on these multiple blockchains, right? So these deployments, at least for now, they will be independent. But yeah, also I would say it's not yet clear how these deployments are going to happen, right? Like I'm in favor of So I see Djed as a protocol, that can have multiple implementations, multiple versions, and these multiple versions can be deployed multiple times to multiple blockchains. But I don't know if that's the position of IOHK.
Okay.
So this is all still a bit unclear.
It's still new and still being built. It's pretty cool to see. As I said, it's pretty cool to see all the development which is happening on ADA, and I think that's this is one of the from what I understand, one of the stable coins on ADA. As someone working on something else as well.
Sorry, you mean that there are other stable coins on Cardano?
Yeah. Or will this be like the main, let's say the main, like on Ethereum, a decentralized DAI would be probably the main one people use for decentralized solution. So this is comparable to DAI?
Comparable to DAI. Okay, so there are many questions there, right? So let me postpone the question about DAI for a moment. Let's talk about other stable coins on Cardano, right?
Yeah.
So the stablecoins team, one of the initiatives that we had was what we were calling third-party stablecoins, where like whenever there was a third party interested in potentially launching a stablecoin on Cardano, we were helping them. So at least from my point of view, we're open to help other parties deploy other stablecoins on Cardano. So that's something that we have been doing, but there was nothing concrete coming out of that line of work so far. Some of you may also have heard of the Plutus Partner Program. IOHK partnered with a few companies that wanted to be, let's say, pioneers in developing Plutus smart contracts. And I know that some of those companies were working on some stable coins, but the goal there, as far as I know, was more to test the Plutus smart contract functionality, and not like to, the stablecoin itself was a secondary goal. The goal was more like to incentivize use and testing of Plutus smart contract, as far as I know. And a few prototypes came out of that, but what will happen with those prototypes is still not clear. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, now the question about DAI, right? DAI is great, right? One of the most well-known and one of the first algorithmic stablecoins. It was one of the stablecoins that influenced our design, obviously, given its prominence. Two other stablecoins that influenced our design were the paper on seigniorage shares, and also a stablecoin called static coin and risk coin. Yeah, so you can see a more detailed comparison with each of these three in the paper that we have published.
Yeah.
But let me see if I can try to highlight a few points. Of these three, I would say that Djed is most similar to static coin and risk coin. So the stable coins here are similar to the static coins, and the reserve coins are similar to the risk coins. I would say that the main differences with static coin is that we have these additional conditions here that decide when users are allowed to buy reserve coins or to sell reserve coins or to buy stable coins. And these conditions make the protocol more stable. And they also protect, for example, the reserve coin holders from dilution. Yeah. Now, with senior shares, the similarity is that our reserve coins are also, as I mentioned before, somewhat related to shares, right? But the difference is that in the senior share model, the stable coins are not backed by anything, and the revenue that the shareholders get comes from the printing of new stable coins, right, from seigniorage. Whereas in our case, the revenue comes from these market making fees that are charged. Now with DAI, what can I say about DAI? How can I summarize? I would say that the main difference with DAI is that Djed is crypto-backed, whereas DAI is crypto-collateralized.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a subtle difference, right? Yeah. So, for example, in Djed, you have this reserve, right? And each stable coin is backed by $1 worth of ADA. At any moment, you can see there's no restriction here. Anyone can take a stable coin and go there to the contract, sell that stable coin, and get $1 worth of ADA. Now, with DAI, there is actually no reserves, right? But there is collateral for the debt positions that the issuers of stablecoins take. Now, if you're holding one of those DAI stablecoins and you're not one of those people who created a vault, you cannot actually take that stablecoin and go to the contract and get $1 worth of ETH, right? What you can do is once one of those vaults gets liquidated, right, and there is an auction to sell the collateral, then you can bid on that auction and get your and convert your DAI into ETH. So yeah, this is the main difference. I hope I answered the question.
No, that was good. So, yeah, he explained a few coins in there, which is good. So yeah, I guess what was the maybe reason to choosing or being blockchain agnostic, kind of in that sense, or not staying with Cardano only and building on other platforms as well. I guess I can guess the reason, but maybe you can expand on the reason why you wanted to expand that.
Well, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not a maximalist, you know, yeah. And yeah, I like all blockchains. I like Cardano. I like other blockchains as well. So I want Djed to be in as many blockchains as possible. I also think that for stable coins, the blockchain is just the infrastructure, right? And the stable coin, like we're even working on a prototype that would allow our stable coin, but also other tokens to be transferred offline and off-chain. Yeah, so maybe for those of you who have watched the presentation in the summit, that's a prototype that we're calling Unchained. And it has been one of the finalists for the CBDC challenge of the Monetary Authority of Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are working very hard on that, but that one is still very much in a research and development stage, you know, so it will take a while for it to be released to the public.
Yeah. So are you working with any other governments on CBDCs in a sense, or exploring the possibility of this this type of mechanism to be used? Because I don't know if how the government's looking at it.
Yeah, we have been trying to interact with central banks. We have been interacting with central banks, but I would say besides this CBDC challenge from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, there's nothing that I can share at the moment.
Of course, yeah, it's still in development. It's interesting how it would be really interesting to understand how it works on the offline and how can you verify the offline transactions. But
yeah, we started working on this offline feature in this Unchained app. Precisely, well, one of the reasons was that I started reading many of the reports prepared by central banks, right? And I saw that many of the central banks wanted to try to replicate the functionality of cash, right? And also wanted CBDCs to be to help, for example, in financial inclusion, right? So, like the CBDC would have to be usable in the same circumstances as cash can be used. And I found this interesting, right? Because this problem of offline transactions is a difficult problem. It's a challenging problem. So
it's a good challenge. Yeah, it's a good challenge.
All the requirements that I read in CBDC reports, this was the requirements that made me most excited, let's say. And we started working on this. But yeah, there are many challenges, and we haven't solved all of the challenges as well. I mean, challenges related to double spending, right? Yeah. So, but for example, cash is also not completely immune to counterfeiting, right? So, our approach there is to aim for an acceptable solution, not a perfect solution where double spending is completely impossible, right? Yeah.
That's a good goal to try and achieve, because it sounds very complicated in that sense of how to not double spend all of the transactions, which is already occurring with other if the blockchain gets hacked. So yeah, it's interesting how can you tackle that, but we'll leave it for the next time, maybe when it's a bit closer to launch, and and you can share a bit more with us. Cool. And so I've heard you're talking about the native implementation versus smart contract, and can you explain what's the difference and what are the advantages?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, in your talk about Djed in the summit, you're talking about native implementation versus smart contract implementation, and maybe you can expand on what's the difference.
Okay. Yes. I think in the summit talk, I mentioned the implementation in OpenStar, right? Where the implementation of the stablecoin is done in Scala directly in the rules of the ledger. So OpenStar would be like a side chain of Cardano.
Okay.
Let's say. So that's one approach, where you can have a native implementation in a side chain. But one of the things that we have been discussing as well, and that I haven't covered in the talk in the summit, is the possibility of having a native implementation in Cardano itself. So a native implementation is an implementation directly in the rules of the blockchain, right? In the rules of the ledger, instead of using smart contracts.
Cool.
I think in the case of Cardano, perhaps the main advantage with that is that it would be easier for us to do staking of the reserves, because you see, imagine that you are a potential reserve coin buyer, right? and you have some ADAs. And then, if you buy reserve coins, you will get some revenue from fees that are charged by the contract, right? But you have another option, right? You can take your ADA and just stake it and get staking rewards. So you see there is a competition between staking rewards and buying reserve coins, and also buying any kind of DeFi token on Cardano, so this is an issue that we are aware and thinking about. So in principle, what's the solution for that? The solution for that is to stake the reserves, and then their staking rewards get accumulated in the reserves, and then there's no competition anymore, right? It becomes clear that it's a good deal to buy reserve coins, because then you get your
staking as well.
Staking rewards, and also you get the revenue from fees.
Cool.
So in theory, this is simple, but in practice, there are some technical challenges. Like, for example, if the reserve becomes too big, then, and we were delegating the reserve to a single stake pool, that stake pool could become saturated, right? So we would have to delegate to many stake pools, and then this makes the smart contracts more complicated. And we would have to try to monitor how saturated these stake pools are. And then there's the question, who decides to which stake pool it goes? So yeah, there are many technical challenges like that, and perhaps a native implementation would be easier, because then we wouldn't have to overcome those technical challenges.
Yeah, and if you come across, so let's say if it's in native implementation, does it have to be? How difficult would it be to kind of fix the problems if there's any problems arising? Like, would it be easier on either one, on native or on smart contract? Stopping smart contract? Like, I don't know. What is a big challenge in that sense?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say that it's about the governance, right, of updates and parameter updates, or even updates of the code itself. I think that the challenges there are more at the theoretical level, of thinking about this governance process than at implementation. Meaning that, implementation would still be hard, but I don't think there would be a significant difference in how hard it would be if we do it natively or if we do it with smart contracts.
Yeah, it would still be difficult.
Well, actually, that's. Sorry, let me backtrack on that, because that's not exactly the case. It would depend on how you do the implementation with Pluto's contracts, right? Like, if you use the monetary policy feature, then the code itself wouldn't be updatable, even though parameters might be. That's just how monetary policies work on Cardano. But you can use some techniques that have been used already on Ergo to make it updatable. But then you wouldn't use the monetary policy as it's normally done. Okay, I think that's perhaps enough about governance. I have some unusual ideas about governance, but
Cool. And will this be is it going to be like open source where everyone can take it and try and use it in a DeFi protocol, like changing the name and using another coin to be the backing coin, or will it be just kind of open source but tied to the way it is at the moment. Like like reserve coin would be the blockchain coin, the ADA, let's say, and wouldn't be in that example if someone starts a DeFi platform and has their own token. Could they implement Djed with their own token system? Maybe to issue stable coins by themselves.
Yeah. Good question. So the papers are public, right? So in principle, anybody can read the paper and implement the protocol according to what's written in the paper. So nothing is patented. IOHK also has the policy of releasing its code as open source using the Apache 2.0 license. Yeah, in fact, for the summit, I spoke with Charles about what we could release and not release, right? And Charles even encouraged us to release the code as Apache 2.0, the Solidity code, I mean, which is the one that is, well, second most advanced, right? The one that is most advanced is the one that has already been deployed in Ergo back in January of this year. But of all the other implementations that we have, the Solidity one is the most advanced so far. So Charles himself was encouraging us to release it as open source 2.0. But I asked him to delay this a little bit because the code is still undergoing audits, you know, internal and external audits. So I hope that after the audits, the code will be released as open source. But yeah, let's see what will happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Anyone else has questions? I've taken over the questions, so yeah. Yeah, I'll just open it up for if someone has a question, post it on the chat. What else was a burning question from my side? I think one of it kind of maybe to explain what's the difference between the algorithmic and normal, like what's the other non-algorithmic stablecoin would be just backed by USD, let's say. So what's the main difference out of them? The backtracking to the start of the conversation, maybe.
So you're talking about asking about the difference between algorithmic stablecoins like Djed or DAI,
yeah,
non-algorithmic stablecoins like Tether, for example, USDT.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe the easiest answer and what people typically think is like that an algorithmic stablecoin is implemented as a smart contract, right? And it's just executed as stated in the smart contract, whereas a non-algorithmic stablecoin like USDT, it's managed by a company, right? And you don't have visibility about the. In fact, they may even and probably they are following an algorithm, right, in their operations, but it's a bit more manual and you don't have visibility about what they are doing. You also not necessarily have visibility about how much reserves they actually have, right? Whereas with a stable coin that is implemented as a smart contract on a blockchain, you have completely visibility about the reserve, right?
Yeah.
But you know the differences, the borderline is not as clear as it may seem, because, for example, suppose that your smart contract is actually updatable, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe there will be a company that has the ability to update the smart contract, you know. And then in that case, I would say that this stable coin, even though it's algorithmic, even though it's on a blockchain, right, it's somewhere between, you know, the fully algorithmic one that we have just discussed and the non-algorithmic ones, you know, because then you would still have an entity that has control over the smart contract.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I mentioned that I have some unusual thoughts about governance. You know, I'm a little bit concerned about that. And yeah, of course, you can still, like these updates, they could be controlled by many entities, right? You could have a governance system where people can vote and so on. But it's still just because you have many entities, you still have those entities controlling the contract, right? And let's suppose that you're a user and you started interacting with that contract, and at one moment, so when you started interacting with that contract, the contract stated that it was going to do X, you know, and then suddenly the majority votes that now the contract should do not X but Y, you know, and maybe this is not fair to that user who started using the contract thinking that the contract would do always X, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as I said, like I'm probably a minority when it comes to the thoughts about governance. But it's a thought that I think is growing. Right. We're starting to see people talking about governance minimization and things like that. You know, so perhaps we will see a return to an approach more similar, like to that principle of code is law, you know, like, and the smart contract is really immutable and reliable. Yeah.
Is it hard for an average person to determine if a smart contract can be updated? If it's updatable?
Well, I guess it depends on the blockchain and on the smart contract language that you're using, right? In Cardano, it would be easy because, for example, if you implement your contract with monetary policies, then that contract will be immutable by design. You know, it will be impossible to update it. But as I said, you can use some techniques, you know, that we have used in Ergo to make the contract updatable. And it will be easy to see on the blockchain whether this is the case or not, and in the case when there is an update, who can do the update. Yeah.
So you'd be able to notice only after, like, if update has been done, you would see it on a blockchain, but prior to the update, it would be not as simple to notice if it can be updated, I guess. But that's what I got it.
No, I think even prior to the update, it would be possible to see that it's updatable. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Where does the chosen stable value come from? An oracle, which is a security issue.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just understood there is something about oracles.
Yeah, if you open the chat on the bottom, you'll see. But it says whether. Yeah.
Okay, just a moment.
The last one. So where does the chosen stable value come from? An oracle, which is the security issue there?
Yeah. So again, this will depend on the implementation. For example, in the case of the Plutus implementation, one thing that is delaying it is precisely that it's still unclear what kind of oracle approach we're going to use, right? In the case of the Solidity implementation, we are simply using Chainlink oracles. So the current implementation that we have just reads the value from Chainlink, you know, and we don't try to do anything like to protect against potential corruption of the Chainlink Oracle. For example, like if the Chainlink Oracle goes down for some reason, then the current Solidity implementation that we have deployed to testnets will potentially have some issues, right? But so we'll have like probably all the other DeFi protocols that depend on Chainlink, right? Now, coincidentally, just yesterday, I had a discussion with Fiat, our lead Solidity engineer working on Djed, and we discussed precisely this. We discussed a few things that we could do to modify the current implementation so that we protect the users in case something catastrophic happens with Chainlink, for example. This is not implemented yet, but yeah, we have some ideas. So yesterday we brainstormed some ideas, and we are letting these ideas get processed by our brains, to see.
Yeah, to settle down and then when you can write it down and think about it again, which is good. No, and so it's Chainlink is there. From what I understand, Chainlink has had some coming onto Cardano as well, or moving onto Cardano. They
have some announcement of a partnership between Chainlink and Cardano.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as much as you do. I heard about it in the summit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Cool. Well, I've talked enough, but I will give another few questions. If anyone has a question, please ask now. Otherwise, can send it through later on. But yeah, I think we've been talking for an hour almost, and it was good for me to get a bit more into what's the workings of Djed, and I really want to see how it works. And so at the moment it's on a live Ergo blockchain.
Yeah.
And it's working there. And when do you have any timeline when it's going to be implemented out of testnets and onto mainnets on the others?
Yeah, so you can see the, sorry, no, that's not what I wanted to show. Yeah, okay, yeah, you can see it here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can interact with the implementation, with the deployed implementation on Ergo. Here it's called Sigma USD, so sigmausd.io. So, yeah, you can see, for example, the reserve ratio. You can see that there's $20 million worth of ERG. Sorry, there's an amount of ERG worth $20 million in the reserve. Yeah, now for the Solidity implementation, you can interact with the testnets here. So we have this dashboard, which is an alpha version, maybe buggy. If you find any issues, please let us know.
Of course.
So it has been deployed to Rinkaby, Fuji, Mumbai. Yeah.
It works so far. Where can we find the testnet? What's the address?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Where can you find the testnet? Where to play around? Does it have an address? Or it will be Djed on the Djed one?
I'm not sure I understood the question. So to interact with these testnets, you should get some testnet ETH, right, for each of these testnets.
Yeah.
You do that in some using the faucets of these testnets. Then once you have these testnet tokens in your MetaMask wallet, you come here and you click buy, sell, and then
what's the URL? I mean, sorry, yeah. What's the address?
The URL.
Yeah.
It's just Djed.1.
.1. That's cool. And I guess people should follow Djed.xyz for all the updates.
Yeah, there's also the partnership with Koti, right, which is also something that I have been working on since Q3 of 2020. So yeah, you can see it here, Djed.xyz.
Yeah. So, cool. All right. Well, I will say thank you for this. And unless someone else has a question, but I think we're just sharing the links now. And yeah, thanks for this presentation, or this kind of explanation. There's more of a presentation, and definitely helped me put some things in my head and sort it out, and kind of know what's the difference between Djed and other stable coins, and yeah, probably content to actually experience it. I do have some alternatives, so I might go and play around and see how we go there. And yeah, we'll wait for other updates, and hopefully you can come back to Canberra soon if that's in the plans. and then we can do a physical meetup where you can meet the community here.
Yeah, it would be great. Yeah, I'm missing Canberra.
Is that in the plans? So you're planning to come back once the borders are open?
It will take a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
Currently not in the plans. So when we escaped from the bushfires, our plan was to spend a few months in Brazil, a few months in Russia, because my wife is from Russia. But then we ended up spending a long time in Brazil, and as a compensation, we will spend a long time in Russia as well.
Well, maybe we'll see. Yeah, maybe we'll see there first. Yeah, because I was saying the same. Probably go back to Europe once the borders are open, so I don't get stuck. So we'll see. I'll wait for that time. But yeah, thanks again. Thank you for coming on and giving us this quick presentation explanation, which is not so quick. It's an hour, so that's even more impressive. Thank you. And yeah, good luck with the rest of stablecoin. Kind of can't wait for all of the news coming out, and what else you're gonna come up with, and how you're gonna solve some of the issues we discussed. And hopefully some CBDCs future in Singapore. Then eventually we'll come to Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Thank you. I will stop recording and we can go.
Wrap up. Yeah.